Today, let's get to listen to stories of triumph amidst failures, courage despite fear, strength through weakness, and even the occasional hopeful cheer from personal punny experiences. I am your host, RKaye, and this is the BetterU podcast. What is up, movement fam? Welcome to another episode of the BetterU podcast. Coach RKaye here, and thank you so much for joining me in today's show. Now, for today, we will get to answer yet another frequently asked question, or possibly another one of those Google search questions that you would have maybe asked a fitness professional or directly Google itself. All right, now for today, we will be answering the question of time. All right, where does time go? No, just kidding. But truly one of the common frustrations that a lot of people who go through a fitness journey, especially if you're trying to start out or maybe trying to go back into it, is how to figure out time management or how to really find time within their schedules, especially if you are a very busy individual. Trying to figure out where to really find the time each day, if you that is technically the training schedule that you want. So basically trying to find the best amount of time within your lifestyle, as opposed to not being able to train at all, right? So, of course, these days, many of you have probably been hearing about types of workouts that don't necessarily need to be an hour length or so. And speaking of an hour length, I think that is one of the most common misconceptions that a lot of people who want to get back into fitness truly have a hard time, getting over. All right. Meaning there still is that idea that we have to incorporate a workout routine that will last an hour or maybe more than for a training session to be effective, which is technically not the case. All right, so talking about time, if you are somebody who actually has that amount of time in their schedule, so let's say you are able to commit yourself to a training schedule or a workout routine that will last an hour, that would mean that you can do it as sparingly in a week's time, as opposed to somebody who can only manage maybe 10-15 minutes in a day. All right, so what am I saying here? What I'm saying is, excuse me for that. So what I'm saying here today is that studies have shown that if you would like, or that the only time that you really get to spare within a day is around 15-20 minutes max, then you would need to do it more frequently than as opposed to someone who can commit themselves to an entire hour uninterrupted. All right. Why? Because of course the length of time that you get to train would mean that you would be able to incorporate more activities or more types of exercises within that routine, as opposed to if you only have 10-15 minutes, you'll probably only choose maybe between 3 to 5 exercises, repeat that in a circuit with very minimal rest in between. All right. Now, also the fact that you only have a very limited time that you will be training or putting yourself into training exercise mode, you can also look into splitting out your routine within the day. So let's say that you cannot do the 1 hour routine, all right? But what you can manage to do is to split it into 2 half-hour sessions. That would also require you lesser frequency um within a week's time if you plan out your schedule. So those are the things that you can actually play along with or play around with your training. Now, to make the long story short, all right, the issue here is that your own schedule, your own availability is what would actually dictate you to get into a particular time frame to train. All right. Now, there are some people who are a little touchy about their training schedules. They're a little bit very strict about it. And for me, I think that that's a great thing. But if your schedule is pretty tight and you don't necessarily really get that opportunity to commit to what is in your mind that you're supposed to be doing, then it is still best that you are able to commit to something that you can readily do. What do I mean by this? If your training programming is meant for an hour 3 times a week, let's say as an example, don't take it against yourself that you are unable to stick with the 3 times a week at 1 hour session. So again, as I explained a little while back, you can always opt for shorter bursts of training within your day that is available to you. That is a lot more beneficial for you than just skipping out on the training itself because you couldn't do the full hour. All right. And again, guys, the efficiency or the effectiveness of your training routine doesn't necessarily rely on longer bouts of exercise. All right. You can search this. There are so many people who have already proven this. And lately, aside from circuit training, aside from high intensity interval training, very short amount of time that you can put into your training. These days, there are also some fitness snacks that they call it a fitness snack, which is quite, it's quite a refreshing type of idea to put into perspective because when we eat, we have snacks or small meals. It's the same for your training. These exercise snacks are between 10 to 15 minutes at max, maybe even shorter if you can. But again, you need to put in the most amount of work into it. All right. And speaking of that, let's talk about that. Okay. Now, of course, aside from the fact that during an hour's training, you would have a bit more leeway to rest between each movements and exercises. All right. Sometimes that is quite the factor that is included in your training regimen because in an hour, again, you are able to do a lot more exercises, which means you need a bit more recovery within that period. All right. So that is one issue that you would have to really accept during your training programming for an hour. Now, if you are the type of person, again, who can only commit to maybe half an hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, all right, because of the shorter amount of time that you have, what happens? You need to adjust your training routine in such a way that rest is a little bit more condensed, as we can say. All right, so you can time your rest periods, and if you're brave enough, you can be somebody who can actually opt out of your rest periods, because what you want is really to just continuously have activity within that time frame that you have. And so if you continuously do your exercise routine, that will make it, number one, much more high intensity, which will make your programming effective in that way. All right. And so those are some of the factors that you should also look into. If you're somebody starting out, maybe going for short bursts or shorter training sessions without or with very limited rest periods, it might not be something that you would want to put yourself up to yet. So maybe you can reduce the amount of rests that or off of rest rather. All right, I'm trying to figure out the type of terminology that we can have here, but technically speaking, yes, you know, if you are starting off, it may be something that will be a very big adjustment for you. But again, a lot of people these days, when they go into a fitness routine, especially if they're starting from scratch, they really are very committed to it. But again, if you are the type of person who accepts the fact that you really do need rest between exercises, then you may need to opt for maybe a bit longer duration, or you can strictly time your rest periods between each exercise. So let's say you have 15 minutes, okay? Maybe around 10% of the 15 minutes, you can opt for that rest period, all right? So it really actually all depends on how you would like to really get into being, number one, committed, number two, being consistent in your routine. But like I said, being able to really stay active as much as you can for as longer of a period as possible is what you should be looking into. All right, nothing sort of, you know, I'm gonna train for this month and then forget about the rest of the year. All right, what we truly want is, you know, being able to stay within that training mode and that mindset as well, of you staying within, you know, being active as much as you can for longer years of your life. All right. And yeah, essentially when we get to talk about, you know, having time, it really is a commitment. It really takes a lot of, you know, habit formation. It's not something that you should get frustrated about just because you weren't able to, you know, stick to it after a week or two. All right. it takes a while for everything really to pan out for you. And oftentimes it is between a span of a month to 3 months when you've been really, really consistent within that time frame, then that becomes a lot more becomes easier along the way. And of course, even when, weeks and months and years come by and you still kind of get frustrated because everything just seems a bit like too scattered for you, that's okay. Because again, in the long run, what you want is to be able to sustain being physically active and staying healthier and improving your wellness through just being able to do everything as more frequently as you did before. All right, so I know, I get it, it's quite an issue that a lot of people get frustrated about. I myself get frustrated about it as well, but the fact still remains that if you truly are somebody who wants to commit to that change, then you'll be able to figure things out. And of course, it wouldn't really hurt if you get to consult with somebody, get to focus your efforts as well on not just finding help all on your own, but also to get somebody to assist you and guide you and coach you throughout your fitness journey. All right. So, again, guys, today I hope that you got to pick up a few tips, a few tricks, a few ideas that will really help you out in your own fitness journey as well. So, yeah, that is pretty much today's show for all of you. That is our episode for today. And so, if you guys have been continuously watching the podcast episodes, thank you very much for being with me every Fridays. And thank you so much for also being just part of the YouTube community that I have. Thank you very much, guys. And as always, if you guys have not been able to subscribe to the channel yet, if you're seeing this for the first time, or if you've seen my face a few times already, but you haven't subscribed yet, please do hit that subscribe button because it really does help the channel. And if you found this episode pretty interesting, if you think somebody can learn from it today, please go ahead and like the video and share it as well with their family and friends. And if you also have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those below. And you never know, I may be able to answer some of your inquiries in future episodes of the show. All right, guys. Again, Coach RKaye here. Thank you so much for joining me today. And always remember to never give up on your movement journey because it's never too late to move. Bye-bye.